Hello everyone, and welcome back to the next part in the first episode of the Soviet Union series. Last episode we had a very brief look at how we got here and what kind of problems we're facing. So now let's dig a bit deeper and take a look at the units and at our military forces that we were dealing with here. Let's begin let's begin with the Air Force. So if we are ignoring, so let's put everything away that's outdated. So all the interwar stuff, we're not going to be building any of that. And we've got the basic airframes here. Okay, so we have the DB3 interwar medium airframe. These are old tactical bombers. Let's put those away as well. These are strategic bombers, which we're not really going to be dealing with too much. And they're also interwar, so we'll put those away. And that leaves us with two aircraft designs that we are currently producing. We've got the I-16 fighter, and we've got the ANT-40 tactical bomber. So let's have a look at the I-16. The I-16 has, unfortunately, a relatively outdated engine. This is the first monoplane that we actually been building. The I-15s, I believe, which is going to be the majority of our current Air Force, is all still biplanes. So we can actually compare that. We could if we actually had, yes, there. So we can look at the I-15 design. The I-15s were, as you can kind of see it there, were biplanes, and they actually had more air attack. They had better guns on those things than what we've got on the I-16. The I-16 is a bit crap. If you're not familiar with how this works in the new DLC. So you basically build your planes out of the airframes, and you depending on what you stick onto them, you can have them multi-role. So it's no longer a hard separation between fighters and CAS and tactical bombers. So for example, right, if this is the I-16, it's a fighter. It's currently got two LMGs. So that's its whole weaponry. It has, however, building slots. So I could give it, let's say, bomb locks onto the wings. And if this unlocks, you can see it here now suddenly, this unlocks new missions that you can send it on. So previously I could only send air superiority and interception, but now I can actually use these for close air support. So if they are flying close air support, if I click that, you see that the agility goes down. That's because I now have actually changed the loadout of these planes to give them bombs under the wings. If I have them flying in an air superiority mode, on an air superiority missions, they will not be having the bombs equipped, and as such, even though they actually have the bomb locks on, they will not get the agility drop. So this means you can actually start creating multi-role planes, which is really fascinating. And yeah, so you can kind of distinguish between completely specialized or multi-role planes and for different things that you want to do. Anyway, we're not going to do that with these things because they're terrible as they are. So the air attack is really dreadful on these things. What I want is, and we're not going to be able to do that yet because I don't have the air experience, but what I would like to have is I would like to start using the cannons. These are, it doesn't actually say what these are, but they're probably something like 20 millimeter or similar that we can use and have a twin set of cannons. Now, ideally, I would like to have two of those. Now, the problem is I can't do that because my plane's too heavy, because thrust to weight ratio is a thing. So I've only got 15 thrust, but now I've got 20 weight due to the four cannons in the wing mounted cannons here. Now, I could upgrade the engine. That is going to increase it slightly because it's a better engine, but still not enough. I could go over to a twin engine, and that would work. But now I'm severely dropping also, and I'm severely starting to make this thing expensive. Because look at this. This is 47 IC, whereas if I put that back to a single engine, we're talking about 33. So that's a massive, sticking a second engine onto these things is a massive investment. So what we can do instead is we can throw four LMGs into the wings and have two probably nose-mounted cannons on this thing. which gives it a significant boost of air attack. So that we get 24 additional air attack. We are losing a little bit of agility, but that is sort of the design that I want to get to. Unfortunately, I'm going to need 7 air experience to make that happen. So it's not going to happen overnight, but we'll get there. Similarly, we're going to need some form of dive bomber, because I don't necessarily want to use tactical bombers because they're too expensive. Tactical bombers, the design we currently have, has some internal bomb base. It has some wing mounted bomb hooks, and it's got a twin engine, and it has a twin light machine gun turret somewhere on the rear, presumably, for defense. So as you can see, a tactical bomber now actually has air attack. As such, it'll be able to shoot things down. Now, you can't send it onto an air superiority mission because it doesn't have any forward-mounted guns, but it does have its own defensive turrets, which means it can defend itself against incoming fighters. Which makes it... I really, really love what they've done with this whole air setup. It takes a second to get used to, but it makes so much more sense than what we had previously. So we will have to improve these a little bit as well. We still have some thrust, some excess thrust here for the weight that we're racking. But ideally, I would like to start phasing these out and switch over to a close air support, which is probably going to look... So what we can do, and we are going to have to go with the cheap here, because we're going to need a lot of things. They don't have to be great, but we need a lot of them. So if I put a single engine in the front, and instead of giving him machine guns, we can either use the wing bomb locks, or we can put a small internal bomb bay. And honestly, the wing bomb locks are if you put those in and you put onto close air support, you lose 20 agility, because having the bombs externally means that these things are actually going to have increased drag and can't maneuver as well. Whereas if you use the internal base, you're actually going to be doing more damage on ground attack, and you lose less of your agility because they're internal, but they are a little bit heavier in terms of weight. So if we put 2 of those on, we're still good in terms of thrust, and we might even still be able to fit an LMG turret in the rear to have some defense towards the rear. So this would be a very good close air support that has a 16 ground attack compared to the if we're putting that on close air support, compared to the 9 ground attack. So almost twice the ground attack of the tactical bombers that we're currently having in production. Now, the stuff that we're actually having available is a lot older than these, but yeah, modernization is desperately needed in these things. Next up, let's have a look at our tanks. Where are our tanks? Here. So at least that hasn't really changed. We've got, again, I'm going to, oh, nope, that was the improved one. I just wanted to get rid of the basic one, so let's get that back in. Improved light tank chassis, there we go. We have a T-28, which is an old interwar medium tank, which has a couple of secondary turrets, and is one of those multi-turreted setups. The picture is in no way representative. I don't know if there's a better match for it. No, definitely not that one. It was one of those weird multi-turreted setups, I think. No, hang on. The T-28 wasn't the T-28 a light tank? No, it's the T-26. Anyway, this is an interwar design that we're not really going to be dealing with. There's the T-26. Yes, that one I was thinking of. This is actually the right model, I think, for the T-26. So the problem with the T-26 is that it's an infantry tank, and it only does 5 kilometers an hour. So that thing is not very good. And it's the 1933 model of the light tank, and the armor is pitiful. So we're not really going to be doing an awful lot with it. But this is actually one of the mainstays that we have. And then we've got the BT-5. And there's actually a BT-7 up there, which for some reason the game doesn't want to show me right now. Let's open that again. Nope, you don't wanna. Okay, we'll figure that out in a minute. But We've got the BT5, which is a light tank, and this thing is actually starting to have a decent amount of engine power and speed. It doesn't have an awful lot of firepower, but it's one of those really early light tanks. No great armor, but decent speed, terrible reliability. They break down quite a bit, these early designs. And this is one of the designs we have the. And I think I might have to. Can I see if I can get? So that's a little bugged that I can't actually scroll up there, but I can click. I can kind of click on it underneath. We have the BT7, which is the most modern variant of the light tank that we have. This thing actually does over 10 kilometers an hour, which is great. It actually has a relatively decent gun. Again, it doesn't tell us. I think this was a 47 millimeter or something, but it's an early light tank. It's just what these things do. And that's sort of something we can kind of work with. A couple of improvements that I would like to see on this would be to give it a radio. Now, I know that historically the Soviet tanks, most of them didn't have radios because there weren't enough radios around. But that'll give us a little bit of additional breakthrough. And then we can put, I think these things had 2 machine guns. So that'll give us two additional soft attack. Just a slight improvement that we can make, but this is not something that we're going to be necessarily, going with an awful lot longer. But this is, I think this is the improved light tank chassis. So that's actually the most modern variant that we can currently build. Now we have templates. And let's have a quick look on what they look like. We've got our, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that. I will have to look that up. I think it's going to be Strelkovaya Divizia, but I probably butchered that terribly. So I'm going to look it up before I make a fool out of myself. So our basic infantry template is 9 infantry and one artillery support company. We do have mountaineers, and we actually have a fair amount of these divisions. These are 24 with engineers and support artillery. These are actually relatively powerful mountain rifle divisions, so these are pretty good, and we do have a fair amount of them. We do have a motorized division, which is only a 12 width, unfortunately, with no artillery support or anything, so it can't do an awful lot, but it is quick. We don't have many of those. We do have the ubiquitous cavalry divisions, which are, we do have a couple because obviously historically there were a lot of them, but we're probably not going to do an awful lot with them. We do have the NKVD, which are more like military police divisions, and this is a 12 with MP. We can't really do anything with these because these are all locked. But these are the NKVD kind of MP divisions, and we have an armored division, which is an 18 width, which is a little short on the trucks, but with a 5. I think this is actually halfway historical. Historically, I think at this time they would have had the support companies in there, not just the battalions. But this is sort of our starting fast division. Now, fast division, of course, only when we're using the BT5s or the BT7s. If we're using the T28s, these are cavalry tanks. Cavalry tanks were tanks that were meant to, replace cavalry and maneuver quickly on the battlefield. Infantry tanks were tanks that were meant to be giving fire support to infantry, just basically self-propelled arty. That was the original idea behind these things. And we've actually got some paratroopers, which I'm not sure I'm going to be using, given that we don't really have an awful lot of support planes or transport planes. I don't think we have any transport planes, so maybe we'll use them in the future for some special operations. But yeah, that's what we've got, and that's what we've got to work with. Now, lastly, let's have a very quick look at our Navy. Navy we're not going to do an awful lot with. I just want to have a quick look around. So we've got the Marat class of battleships. These things are relatively old. They've got 305mm main guns, not an awful lot of them, and yeah, this is just a dated design, an old battleship. design. We've got the Kirov class of cruisers, of heavy cruisers, which is running with 180mm guns, as it should, but not an awful lot of them. Again, probably not something we're going to be focusing on, but this would be probably the more modern cruisers that gun cruisers that we'd be working with. We've got some older cruisers, and we've got the Leningrad and Minsk class of relatively modern destroyers. So these should be somewhat decent as convoy escorts. They don't really have a lot of torpedo firepower or gun firepower, but they do have some depth charges, so it's not completely terrible. We also have the Bug class of destroyers. These are mine layers, so these we might actually be able to use. These things are just clean up mine layers, so they're not actually meant for any kind of combat engagement, and they're cheap as they come. Then we've got the Series 9 hull of submarines, which are somewhat modern, and unfortunately they are deficient in the amount of torpedoes that they have, but you can fix those probably relatively easily. And we've got the Series 2, which is also a 1936, which is a sort of hybrid with outdated engines and weapons. We're not going to be building any of these. And we've got the Series 10, which is, for some reason, I don't know what their series is, and is a very old submarine design, which does have some torpedoes, but it is an interwar submarine, so relatively aged, that whole thing. So the one thing that we have a lot of is oil. We actually have a decent amount of oil, which means we are for once not going to be short on fuel, which means we can probably, train the Navy actually. It's not like in the Japan series where we were always short, but the main so we've sort of got three naval theaters. We've got the Upper Baltics, which is a fjord area, which means it's really not very good for any kind of capital ships, but it is working pretty well for submarines and destroyers. So we can probably kind of just keep this clean as much as we want. We do have, I'm not sure if we're going to have to worry about the Barents Sea if there's anybody coming around the north, but that may be something that we need to deal with. The Black Sea is obviously an area that is very, very contentious. So this is where we are going to need to have some maritime power in place here, and it is an irregular ocean tile. We are also not in best terms with Turkey, because Turkey has, as you can see, currently the straits in Istanbul are demilitarized, but Turkey is about to change that. And obviously the threat from potentially Germany coming in the future. And the third theater that we have to deal with is potentially Japan. Because if Japan gets any funny ideas, then yes, we have a border here. We do have some troops stationed in the east, just to make sure that Japan doesn't do anything funny, because we've had a couple of clashes with them historically in the past. So we're definitely wary of any kind of Japanese involvement. And yeah, we've got the relatively heavily industrialized area. If we look at our supply routes and railroads, this is where it's all at, and this is all a huge amount of nothing. So that bit here is somewhat important. This bit here is relatively large and vast and empty. This over here is only good for sending dissidents into and keeping them there and keeping them out of harm's way. But yeah, we are going to probably have to deal with, especially up north here, there's not an awful lot going on either. We have to eventually deal with some supply situations. In general, the strategy is going to be twofold. So the main thrust, or the main focus for the first couple of years, is going to be economy, because we have to build up our economy. So we will completely focus on industrialization, like what Stalin started. We need to industrialize. At the same time, Stalin is somewhat paranoid, and that's going to cause us a lot of problems because, as I said in the last episode, he is following the time-honored tradition of just shooting people he doesn't like. And if he starts getting suspicious of everybody around him, we'll be running out of capable leaders very quickly because he keeps executing them. So that's something we're going to have to be dealing with. And then obviously we will be focusing on construction. And I'm actually going to get that queue already going. And we will be building up civilian factories. I'm going to be starting to build up in the high infrastructure areas. So around here, in Kharkov, in Kiev, and in Moscow. And we've got some good infrastructure in Leningrad up north. But other than that, and we've got some over here. So in Stalingrad, we can build as well. So that's going to keep us busy. Of course, the construction speed is abysmal. So this is going to take, it's like 4 months to create a factory. The reason we need factories is the 5-year plan. So we currently have the 5-year plan. There it is, which costs us 5% consumer goods. So if we're looking over at the construction, we see that 30 of our 45 factories are be given to civilians, which is of course no good. That is because we are on civilian economy and another 5% from the 5-year plan. Now, obviously the people need goods, but we also need to industrialize. So getting off civilian economy is going to be important. And we can already go off to partial mobilization, but we'll have some tricks up our sleeve to convince the people that war is on the horizon and get that going. And we will obviously need to focus heavily on the industry. Now, generally, you would probably assume that I'll go with dispersed industry. I am actually thinking of going concentrated industry because it feels like it fits more. A lot of the Soviet industrialization was about building, merging things and building this kind of massive plants that could have heavy output. So I feel that this is more appropriate, even though this might gameplay-wise not be the ideal one. But obviously, in order to get there, we're going to have to do machine tools. We're going to have to do construction. The other thing that we're really going to focus heavily on is construction. So for the first couple of years, we're probably more or less going to ignore a lot of things and just focus on getting our industry going, because we need, in order to defend ourselves against the Germans, we will need rapid industrialization, and that is going to be the first thing we're going to do. And the first political focus that we can take is heavy industry. It takes time. A lot of these focuses are 35 days, so they're a lot faster than you are on the standard 70-day focuses. This will give us two civilian factories, so that's a good start. We're going to do that, and then the thrust construction-wise will be just industrialize as much as we possibly can. Now that doesn't mean that we're going to be sitting here until 1941 and just wait for the inevitable. We are obviously going to keep ourselves busy because the Soviet Union is too big and too important to just be an isolated. Like these capitalists over here, right, these guys, they can sit on their things for another couple of years and just do whatever. But the Soviet Union is the leader of the communist world revolution, and as such, we are actually necessary abroad. And the very first thing we're going to be doing is helping these guys out down here. Now, we're not going to be able to make them win. This, by the way, is Ethiopia as it looks like now. So I haven't played that yet, but and this is the easier difficulty Ethiopia. But we'll be helping out the Ethiopians a little bit, because Ethiopia is mostly consisting of mountains, and we, as it so happens, have a bunch of mountain divisions that are actually pretty capable. So we can send some of those over there, and more for moral support and for giving our generals some field experience. And then the next obviously is going to be, there's rumors of civil war in Spain. So if that kicks off, especially that this is going to be a war between a more left-leaning Spain and a more right-leaning Spain, we obviously will try to see if we can get the left-leaning Spain to win. And even if we can't, then we will get some good experiences out of that for improving ourselves, because the first couple of years are all going to be about making the socialist state the better alternative to everything else. Because communism needs to prove itself. It's no longer the theory of a long-bearded philosopher. It now is in practice, and the challenges are many. Anyway, that's it for me today. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.